Hello, I'm Leroy Garcia, and this is Blue Rain Gallery Podcast. Today in the studio here at Blue Rain, we have with us Brad Overton. Welcome, Brad.
Hey,
Brad's
good
been
to see you.
with Blue Rain at least 12 years or more. I can't remember. Off and on.
2015.
2015, so it's been a
Yeah.
while.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, nice. It's been a good journey.
Yeah.
Um,
At least 2015, maybe
at least,
sooner.
yeah, maybe a little bit.
Yeah. As soon as I said that, I wanted to say
12.
maybe 12.
12.
Yep.
So, yeah. Brad is a painter that's very diverse in all kinds of subject matters and also mediums, which we'll talk about. But before we go, let's introduce you to the public here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from. Tell us about your beginnings of your art career and why you ended up being an artist.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot, but it's a good story. Okay. So let's see. Where should I start? I was always drawing as a kid. It's what I did every day. It was music and drawing. I would run home from school as fast as I could at the end of the day because I was obsessed with music and I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to miss my favorite song because I didn't have any records or anything. Everything I listened to was on the radio because I was in second grade. So I would sprint home every day, turn on the radio, listen to music, and draw. And that and cartoons and friends, that was my life. And it was saturated with pop culture, wonder, imagination. My parents were supportive and encouraging of the art. And, my younger brother was into it. I was into it. My mom was a talented sculptor. Still is. Hasn't been her journey, but she had incredible talent and passed on some of that interest and some of that fire. And I'm really grateful that I got to do that. And, Santa Fe, my first trip to Santa Fe, I was 16 years old and it was Thanksgiving. Black Friday, my family ended up in, we had some relatives in Farmington and we were visiting for Thanksgiving, and my grandfather was there too. And he was like a wild man. He was like a prospector, boxer, demo rider for Harley Davidson. He used to race motorcycles across Emerald Valley, California. Like he'd stand up on a panhead,
Nice.
Going 80 miles an hour and put his arms out to show off the motorcycle's balance for the Harley dealers. Anyway, he was there. He brought us all. He's like, we have to go to Santa Fe. Like, you're all here. So he took all of us. I mean, there must have been 20 people, and we came to Santa Fe and had lunch at the Shed. And I was 16, as I mentioned, and I had been exposed to Western art and Western culture through him in Southern California when he was there. He was a dairy farmer in Southern California, and he was a prospector, strip miner, cowboy badass in Montana. We would spend summers up there. Then he was in Arizona. And at this point, he was, I think he was between Arizona and New Mexico. Anyway, he got us into town. We had this great food, and I was blown away because I took off. I've always been kind of a loner, and I'd go off and do my own thing. And it's a good way to be if you're an artist because you like to spend time alone. You better if you're going to be a painter. I got on Canyon Road, and I wasn't so interested in the art. I remember walking up the street and not feeling really at home, looking into the gallery spaces. But then I got around the back side. I got up the alley in the back, and I walked up there, and I saw crates, and I saw a couple sculptures that had been left out on patios, and I saw like the remnants of the opening.
I saw the underbelly.
I saw the underbelly, and that I was like, I related to that. And I knew that artists had sent work, and I knew that artists were working in their studios to provide work. And I thought to myself, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. So I went around and collected a few job applications, and I got and everybody was looking for me. Um, and I got, I found my family, and I went over to my dad, and I'm like, Dad, listen, just loan me like $1,000, and I'll get a job. I'm just going to stay here. I'll get my GED or something like that, but I'll figure it out. Just leave me here, and I'll live in Santa Fe, and I'll be an artist. And he said, what?
Little young.
And I'm like, no, look, I got job applications. I'm set. I'll do this. I can do this. And he goes, get in the car. So I, anyway, he didn't let me do it. But it really planted the seed that I could use my passion for drawing and painting and live this lifestyle. It's the lifestyle, the freedom, the creativity, the expression that I wanted. So I went home. I had been a musician. That was what I wanted to do. I was in a punk band called The Stench in Salt Lake City, and I quit the band.
That's an unusual name.
Yeah, I was the guitar player. The guitar player, Terrence, his guitar teacher came up with the name, I think.
Yeah.
And,
well, that's a good punk rock.
It was a great. Oh, they were great. I quit the band. I couldn't handle I didn't want to sleep on floors and drink beer. I didn't want to go on tour as a punk rocker. I created the band and wrote some songs, and that's where I left it. And that was enough for me. And then I wanted to do my next thing. And that's kind of been my personality. It's like, I execute my idea and present it. And then I do my next idea and present it. And that's kind of been my MO as a painter.
Well, as a musician, as a musician as well, I see a little paralleling in what you're doing. Yeah. You've recorded stuff on your own, right?
Yeah. Well, I have a friend who was an engineer, producer at CBS Records. He was a rock star for a while. He was a bass player for a metal band called Prong. But he had a great sensibility, has a great sensibility for all kinds of music, just a gifted person, Mike Kirkland in Salt Lake City. And he recorded some stuff for me that really worked out, really sounds good because of him. I can write a song, and Mike really knows how to refine it.
You're pretty good.
Thanks.
I've heard a few of your songs.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, so you have a famous brother as well, Greg Overton.
Yeah.
And Greg, he's mostly on the Native American spectrum, right? As
Absolutely.
Far as subject matter. I think one thing I remembered is he was on Joe Rogan's show, right?
Yeah. He was doing great just in that
Western genre.
Yeah, the Western heritage. But it's like he's got his own stamp on it because he's literally been doing the same subject matter since he was 5 years old. So, it's just more and more and more of the same.
I can't remember. I saw some paintings that Joe Rogan got of his. There's one in the studio, I think, right?
Yeah, there's one in the studio. There's one in his house. And I think a bunch of his buddies have commissioned things down the line too. So it's like he's got a real celebrity following, which is just fantastic.
Oh, that's nice.
So he's reveling in it and really just.
So where he's really focused. One thing I liked about you, what you've said, you go from one subject to the next.
I do.
And since I've met you, I've seen boxes, the calaveras, and all different kind of subject matter.
Yeah.
Versus Greg, he's really focused, refining exactly what he's doing. And I really enjoyed that about you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
That's takes a lot of creativity, innovation, a lot of thought.
Well, it's kind of like, sometimes I think I wish I could be one of those guys who's able to, ride one wave and just do it.
I think that's kind of boring though.
Well, it's just not me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, maybe that'll happen someday, but it hasn't happened yet. So until it does, I'm just going to keep sinking my teeth in as far as I can to each series as I go.
I feel the same way about the gallery. If you come in the gallery, it's pretty eclectic.
Yeah, eclectic is the word too.
I can't focus on just one thing.
I know, and it's so funny that you mentioned that because one of my favorite artists, and who's a guy who's been a great mentor to me, Michael Scott.
Mhm.
No relation to the comedian.
Right, right.
Anyway, he's a Santa Fe guy, and I was blown away by a show of his that I saw in 2003 at Gerald Peters. And a few years later, I couldn't get it out of my head, and I called him, and he loved what I was doing, and we became friends. And he suggested I come to Blue Rain Gallery with this work, and it's really funny. And that's how we met. Because I kept pestering you guys.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Who's this guy?" And you find, you looked at it, and you came up to Salt Lake. You were there for a wedding, and here's a funny story. You came to my studio. Remember that time? And you called me.
It's like a warehouse, I think, right?
It was a warehouse. It was a friend of mine owns this big, huge building, and it's now being converted into condos. It's really gorgeous. Micah Peters in Salt Lake. He's a developer there and a good buddy. But he let me use this entire building.
You could skateboard in it. I remember your skateboard.
I was skateboarding in there. I was playing music in there. I lived there for a short time. It was just a great space. And anyway, so you called me, and you were like, "Hey, this is Leroy Garcia." I'm like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" He's like, "Are you at your studio?" And I go, "Yeah." I was not at my studio. And you go, "Good, I'll be there in 10 minutes." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Bleep, bleep. Oh, bleep. So I had to hurry and get my ass over to the studio and meet Leroy Garcia and be ready. And I pulled it off, and you showed up, and you like in a cool Porsche, and you were ready to go to some wedding. I remember you had some cool cowboy boots on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we talked for a long time, and you said you liked the aesthetic of the things I was doing. And I even had an eclectic mix of paintings in the studio that day, I remember. So
yeah,
it's
really
been the same. It's been the same. And then I think we did the first show. It went great. And the rest is history.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm really excited about this show because this is one of those new ideas that you've been developing over the last few years.
Yeah.
I've been watching.
Yeah.
And you brought us 5 new paintings. Let's start with the first one.
Okay.
About inspiration. Why don't we just talk about the general aesthetic of what you're trying to do here?
Okay.
So tell us why the girls with the guns.
Well, I like the idea of a siren, and I also like the idea, I have a daughter, and I love and care about women, and I see the vulnerability and the beauty and the fierceness and the allure and all the things that are quintessentially feminine. And I just have this this feeling that the juxtaposition between the vulnerability of needing to get somewhere and having your thumb out on the highway in the West, but a revolver in the other hand, is something that means to me a capability, a strength, with that sexuality and beauty that is there, and is like, and so it's so powerful that there are people who would misuse it or have bad intentions, and that's the way the world is.
Yeah.
But so I arm these women, and that juxtaposition, the armed beauty, is really powerful to me.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. It sounds like, it feels like rock and roll sounds. You know what I mean? It's like, I want these paintings to look like Pat Benatar sung them into being. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's like that vulnerability and that power is something that is so beautiful to me.
Well, there's 2 of the 5 that are on more of a muted color palette: the Turquoise Heart, Adobe Sky, and the Sky Fighter. Why did you choose a muted palette for those versus the other 3 that are stark?
Well, it's pretty simple, really. I did the painting called Adobe Sky first. And the necklace wasn't turquoise at first. It was like the model had been wearing this kind of a glass piece, and it was a really nice crystal necklace. But when I painted the picture, the white background was beautiful, just with nothing back there. But I wanted to do something, and I changed it around a lot. And I found this old. I collect a lot of old things, and I had this little matchbook from the 70s with a cactus and a cowboy hat and a cowboy on it. And it was just kind of this.
That's right, the essence of a cactus in the
background. Yeah. I mean, so I kind of mimicked that old 70s graphic design style and put that in there. But I had a brick red background and they were in kind of a taupe color, So it was the opposite of what it is now. It was like the dramatic contrast there. Through with all the color in the background. And I felt like I'd lost so much from the stark white, like the white felt like sunlight.
Yeah.
And it just like I had that Naples yellow on her shoulder and her knee. And that was like this beautiful, vivid sun color. And anyway, so I was talking about it with a friend who is a woman in Salt Lake, who's Mikhail. Hey, Mikhail. She's a great musician and a good friend. And she was like, well, what if you kind of ghosted it in there? Like, it's like almost not there. And I'm like, okay, that's a good idea.
And you made it happen.
And I tried it, and she was right. And it's like, that's about the limit of my collaboration, is that I have some good friends who are smart.
Well, it's important to have sounding boards.
Oh, I tell you, you need critiques. I mean, that's the thing about art school. And I think as an artist, you're always in art school because you're learning from yourself, you're learning from your friends, you're learning from your experiences. And you've got to be ready to roll with the progress that comes your way.
Yeah.
Whatever the source is.
Being innovative and constructing a scene is probably one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, you got to stick with it. You got to be there until the painting is done. Yeah. You got to maintain the interest and enthusiasm for a piece is the challenge in having an art career and in finishing one painting.
Yeah. Well, the other three pieces, which are very colorful backgrounds, you put oval or round shapes and then squares. What did you like about that? What gave you that idea?
Well, those are kind of, Mel Ramos did that with logos and products. And that's kind of the origin of that, because I love Mel Ramos's paintings. And I know how much Mel Ramos loved women. He's not, it's like, for sure there's a sexual content there. And he's he explains that as saying, yeah, well, I'm a red-blooded male, and that's why I did what I did. And it's like, well, okay, that's valid. But the design acumen that he has in those pictures just floors me, And so I decided I would pick that up with some like funky 70s graphic design motifs.
It is totally funky.
And I just had so much fun with it. So I pulled some of that in. And then I also had this epiphany that I thought would be fun to do with bringing in Joseph Albers style color theory backgrounds,
Yeah.
And so I played with that.
No, I think that is cool. Let's talk about the subject matter of a woman. Why are they all in bikinis?
Well, I think because so a bikini is a kind of a gun in a way. It's like, what are you going to do? You're helpless in the face of a bikini.
You're vulnerable.
Yeah, she's vulnerable, but who's really more vulnerable? You know what I mean? It's like the one who wields that power is the woman.
Yeah.
A woman who stands in her own power and owns her own sexuality and being, it's like the bikini is a symbol of that. It's a symbol of freedom. It's like that's where the French bikini came out of, a certain brand of feminism that I can embrace.
Yeah. Oh man, that's cool. Well, I think we covered that pretty good. We're also going to include a couple smaller paintings of toys, Western heritage toys that you painted.
Yeah,
Tell us a little
cool.
bit about that.
Well, okay. The toys came about. I was doing the plastic Marx toys, and I think the first time I painted those, well, okay, even further back in the early 2000s, I was doing 10 toys and still lifes, and that comes, that's a tradition in photorealism.
Yeah.
And then I transitioned from that to these Marx toys, and I did a bunch of paintings that were hyper realistic with um, George Ennis paintings as backgrounds.
Mm.
So I was doing some art history in the background and putting Western gunfighter toys in the foreground. And it was kind of this tongue-in-cheek commentary about pop culture being a product of the whole American history.
Yeah.
You know, and in a way, it's like those paintings, and a lot of painters are using those now. The Hudson River School paintings, as backgrounds. We see that in a lot of modern art right now, especially in the West.
Yeah.
And it's like those paintings were kind of like the popular culture of their time.
So were you collecting these toys yourself? Do you have the actual props?
Yes.
Nice.
I have probably 600 little lead toys at this point.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of the Marx toys too.
That is cool.
It's funny, one of my friends, art dealers in Utah, turned me on to a little lead toy skier, and I had never really checked those out before. Yeah. And it was Julie showed me these, and I was like, whoa. And I painted one, and I loved it. I loved doing it, and I started collecting them like crazy. And it's just been, I guess 2011 or 12 since I've been doing those. So that's like, I guess, I do different series, but I don't really stop doing them once they're in the works.
It's just the fact that you keep creating new series, and then
I keep adding to it. I keep adding to the repertoire. So,
well, let's go ahead and leave it there. I'd like to encourage everybody to come and see Brad's work. It'll be hanging up for the next 2 weeks and longer. Well, he has a permanent residency. Like to encourage people to subscribe to our podcast on any of the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, or you can just go to blueraingallery.com under the menu bar podcast. Also want to encourage everybody to take art into your everyday life by going to our store, bluerainprintshop.com. Thank you, Brad.
Hey, thanks, Leroy. Pleasure.